We will be started in about 2 or 3 minutes just to let people get in. Um, we're excited to have you all here. And if you're just joining us, we're just waiting a couple minutes for everyone to join the webinar. We will start in about 2 minutes. Thank you all for joining. We're excited to present this exciting information to you. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. This is the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center's Business Builder Subaward Information webinar. My name is Kirsten Shervanock. I am the ARFBC Launch Coordinator with Craft at Chatham University, located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I will be presenting today along with several of my colleagues who are helping to facilitate the webinar and some panelists who will join us later for the Q&A. Our plan is to present this information to you for about 30 minutes and then to leave 30 minutes for Q&A at the end. So just a few housekeeping things. This session is being recorded, which means that the recording as well as this slide deck of information will be available on our website. Please use the chat for general chat between participants. When you have questions that you would like to pose for the Q&A, please use the Q&A feature. We are hoping to, have as many questions answered in the Q&A as possible. If you see your question already in the Q&A, that's okay. Just go ahead and give it a like or a thumbs up so that we know that this is a question that multiple people are interested in having answered, and we will try to prioritize those questions. Both the chat and the Q&A are being monitored by my colleagues, so they should be able to help you out. And if you'd like to go ahead and use the chat to introduce yourself, you could give us your name, the organization that you're representing, what you produce, any of that information, because as the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center, we are hoping to, forge connections throughout the regional food system. It's not just about the sub awards, but of course, we know that that's a big reason that you're here today. So let's go ahead and get into it. I can walk you through our agenda for the day. We're going to do an introduction of the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center. We will be talking about, of course, the Business Builder Subawards. We'll go through the eligibility guidelines. We'll talk about what technical assistance is and when it is required. We will also talk about project guidelines, the application process, and then the post-award. And then, of course, hoping to leave 30 minutes for the Q&A. So the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center is one of 12 regional food business centers in the United States. So we have a map here so that you can kind of see how the regions are divided up. Our center in Appalachia consists of 18 partners across 7 states. And our purpose is to provide technical assistance or direct support to small food and farm businesses in the region. We are hoping to provide coordination for partnerships and also value chain coordination. And when I talk about value chain coordination, what I'm talking about is building strategic alliances between supply chain actors that are intentionally structured to produce business success and social benefit. And then, of course, what we're talking about today, which is capacity building. And we hope to do that through our Business Builder Subawards, which will provide money to small food and farm businesses across the region to hopefully build capacity and create new markets. So we have some priority project areas that we would like to highlight. And also on this slide, I would like to point out that we have our region mapped out here so that you can see a little more specifically where we're talking about for the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center. And we can go into a little more detail of who we serve later, but this map is a good tool for just seeing the region that we are located in. And so priority project areas, we're talking about food and farm business development. So we hope to develop viable food and farm businesses to meet consumer demand, enhance financial stability, and or increase the region's food supply. We're also focusing on market access to strengthen existing markets, expand new markets, increase food access for underserved populations, and connect value chains. And then strengthening processing, aggregation, distribution infrastructure. So we're talking about connecting or strengthening existing pad infrastructure, make infrastructure more accessible, creating new infrastructure, or enhancing food safety. Now let's talk about the Business Builder Subawards. So we have a total of $16 million available for subawards over 5 cycles. And those 5 cycles are taking place from September 2024 to December 2027, which means that cycle 1 is already open. So the deadline for cycle 1 is November 1st, 2024. And some more important information on that, the project length is 2 years or 24 months, and projects must conclude by December 31st, 2027. So even if you have a project that is funded, in one of the last maybe 2 cycles, that project would still need to be wrapped up by that deadline of December 31st. So that kind of overrides the 24 months project length. Also, very important to note that the maximum award that any entity can receive from the Business Builder Subawards is $100,000. So that means you could apply for the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center for that maximum award, or you might end up applying multiple times for different amounts of money. You would still hit that cap of $100,000. Also, if you were to apply to multiple centers around the country, so say you put in an application with the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center or the Heartland Regional Food Business Center, if you were funded by both centers, still the maximum amount of funding that you could receive is $100,000 in total from any regional food business center across the country. So for our subawards, we have developed 2 tracks that an applicant could take in order to apply for a Business Builder Subaward. The first of those tracks is the Planning and Development Business Builder Subaward. This award is geared toward, as it says, a business that is in the planning stages or is working to develop their business. So this award ranges from $5,000 to $29,999.99, so just under $30,000. And this award is more geared toward a business that might need technical assistance in order to see their project achieved or in order to be able to be ready to apply for the Business Builder Subaward. And for that reason, a letter of support is required in order to apply for the Planning and Development Award. And so that also means that you would be required to receive technical assistance through one of our Center Technical Assistant Providers, or CTAPs. So just again, for the planning and development, letter of support is required and technical assistance is required to receive that letter of support. And we'll go over more about technical assistance a little bit later in this presentation. Another important note is that FFATA reporting is not required for the planning and development track because it does not exceed that $30,000 mark. So the second track that we have developed is the planning and expansion business. The Implementation and Expansion Business Builder Subaward. Now, this award is focused on businesses that have been in existence for a while and are looking to expand their operations. This award ranges from $5,000 to $100,000. So this is going to give you a higher influx of funds to build that capacity for your business. For this award, a letter of support is not required, which means that technical assistance would not be required. Now, we do recommend anyone applying for a Business Builder Subaward to seek out a letter of support from one of our partners, but it is not required to apply for this award. Now, for this one, the FFATA reporting is required because we are potentially going over that $30,000 mark. 2 other important things to remember with the Business Builder Subawards: there is no match required, and this is a reimbursement-based grant. So important to know that you would need to be in a position to have access to the funds before you are reimbursed to utilize this money. Okay, so let's move on to the eligibility guidelines. So who is eligible for this award? Small to mid-sized food and farm businesses or organizations. And when we're talking about small to mid-size, we are talking about maintaining a gross income under $1 million. Each entity that applies for the Business Builder Subawards needs to obtain a unique entity identifier, or a UEI, from SAM.gov upon award. This is not required for the application process, but everyone who receives an award would need a UEI in order to receive funding. And we will go over that in more detail in a little bit. You also need to be able to provide a minimum of 3 months worth of financial records, and you need to have no outstanding taxes, fines, or fees owed to the IRS. And just for everyone's ease of understanding, we do have an eligibility quiz that we have a link to in this presentation, and my colleague Dylan will also be dropping the link to that in the chat for you to use. If you are unsure if you are eligible, that's a great tool for you to use. So, what projects are eligible for funding? We have a list here of some things that are eligible for funding, things like staff time, business planning activities, software implementation, specialized equipment purchases, value chain and supply chain coordination, product development, marketing, supply chain analysis and strategy development, and aggregation or distribution. Things that are not available for funding: purchasing or leasing land, buildings, or real estate, construction, renovation, demolition, or rehabilitation of any building or structure or land, and then non-specialized equipment such as tractors, trucks, or trailers. It's also important to note that projects that are already funded by government money would not be eligible to receive funding for the same project. I've got a list here of some examples of potential projects. This list, of course, is not exhaustive because we are in our first cycle of applications and funding. And so surely we will receive applications that don't fit into some of these bullet points, but this is a list to help you, maybe kind of guide you into what you're thinking about, what project you might want to implement in your business and apply for this award. Now, everyone that applies for or that receives funding through the Business Builder Subawards, as I stated earlier, will need a unique entity identifier or a UEI. So we just want to make sure that this is very clear. In order to receive a UEI, you would need to complete a Financial Assistance Awards only registration in sam.gov. And then you would provide that UEI number associated with that registration, either in your application or post-application once you have that UEI. When you go to sam.gov to create your UEI, make sure that you are choosing the financial assistance option. This registration is completely free. You should not be paying to create a UEI. So if you reach a point where it's asking you to pay for this process, turn around, go back, make sure that you are looking at the financial assistance registration. Okay? And then while you are working on that registration, there will come a point where you are prompted to check a box that says include in public search. We are recommending that you check this box so that your UEI is searchable. And this will just allow us to be able to confirm that, yes, the entity that is applying for this Business Builder Subaward has a UEI, and that will make the process of moving your application on to the review stage or to the award stage much easier. So make sure that you include in public search when you are registering, or if you need to update your UEI information, make sure this box is checked. Okay, so let's talk about what technical assistance looks like. So as we spoke about earlier regarding the tracks for Business Builder Subawards, technical assistance from a Centered Assistance Provider, or a CTAP, is required to receive a letter of support. The letter of support is required for the planning and development track, and the technical assistance and a letter of support are recommended for the implementation and expansion track. So this technical assistance might look like help with your application, business development, research support, financial training and assistance, value chain coordination, market access support, or processing, aggregation, and development support. And really what we are encouraging people to do is to reach out to a center technical assistance provider in your area We have a list of them here. This list is also available on our website. And so this would be the best way for you to begin the process of understanding how you might apply for this award, which track you would want to take, and whether your project fits into the guidelines of the Business Builder Subawards. So once you're ready to do that, we can talk about the application process. So the first thing that you would do is you would go through that eligibility quiz that we spoke about earlier, and you would create a profile in Submittable. Submittable is the platform that we have chosen to use to implement this application and award process. And all of the communication that happens around this application and award will be through Submittable. So you want to make sure that once you create that profile, that you know your login, you know your password, and that any emails coming from Submittable are coming into your email and are easy for you to see. Um, Now, you would want to know before you begin your application which track you are choosing to apply for, because there are two different applications associated with the tracks. So before you apply, you would want to know, I am applying for the implementation and expansion track, and I will be doing that application. This application is fairly extensive, but just know that you are able to save and return to the application. It does not need to be completed in one sitting. You can save it, leave, work on other things, come back and complete it. And that especially will be important because there is a budget addendum that will need to be uploaded. So this addendum can be downloaded from the application. It's an Excel file that you will fill out, and then you will be able to upload that file back into your application. It's either Excel or Google Sheets, but it's that type of file. And then also your letter of support, if it is required. So if you are doing the planning and development track, that letter of support will need to be uploaded to your application, and you would receive that letter of support from your CTAP. So they will not be sending it for you. They will send you the letter of support, and then you will upload that letter of support to your application. Um, and then just recognize that there are several fields within this application that are required for submission. So make sure as you're going through that you are filling in everything that is required before you submit. There is a PDF download option for this application. If you at some point do not have access to internet and would like to download that PDF, you can certainly utilize it for answering questions or perhaps working on your answers to those questions, but the actual submission will take place through Submittable. So if you have any type of accommodation that you would need in order to make that process happen to submit through Submittable, that's a time that you would want to contact a CTAP and make sure that they can help you go through that process. And just a reminder that our first cycle deadline is November 1st, 2024. It's coming up. So once you have your application submitted and we're into the review process, we do have some priority scoring areas that I would like to highlight. Priority scoring will be awarded to applicants located in or serving distressed or at-risk communities, and we are determining those distressed or at-risk communities using the EIG Distressed Communities Index. You're welcome to use this link to check to see if you are a part of that. And then priority points will also be awarded to applicants located in or serving the counties within the service area of the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center. So that map that we looked at early in this presentation that showed the 7 states that the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center covers, that is a resource for you. But more specifically, we have a list of the counties that are within our service area on our website. And that's a great way to figure out if you are located in or are serving those counties. And that will just give you some priority points within the application. So you've gone through the application process and you're funded, and we're into the post-award section. So applicants will be notified through a letter through Submittable whether or not they are awarded. The applicants will then receive a subaward agreement, and this will detail all of the post-award requirements and an understanding of how the reimbursement process will work. So reimbursement requests may be submitted monthly or quarterly. The funds are distributed 30 to 90 days after the request. And then there will also be reporting requirements, which will be required either by the ARFBC or by the USDA. And then, of course, as we spoke about earlier, the FFA-TA reporting requirement for any subaward over $30,000. And then just also important to know that these subawards are taxable as income. So important to think about, when you're planning your budget and your financial understanding of this award, that it is a reimbursement-based grant and that these funds are taxable. Okay, that is everything that we have to get through to kind of give everyone an understanding of this process. So now we'd like to move into the Q&A portion of this webinar. And this Q&A is going to be moderated by my colleague, Liberty Newberry. And we have a panel of folks who are going to be answering your questions. So that panel consists of Cassandra Malice and Francis Carter, who are both from Craft in Pittsburgh. And then we also have Paul Friedman, who is our center director with Rural Action based in Athens, Ohio. And we also have Marissa All on the call from the USDA. And so how this is going to work is Liberty is going to read the questions that you all have been posting in the Q&A and will direct those questions to our panelists. We aim to answer as many questions as possible, hopefully all of your questions during this time, but just know that the conversation does not end here. So any questions that you don't have answered, we will be creating an FAQ to hopefully get those questions answered. And we also want to make sure that any project-specific questions get answered, even if that doesn't happen during the Q&A. So that may look like someone reaching out to you, sometime next week to make sure that your question is answered. But again, the conversation doesn't end here. So if you have a question that doesn't get answered, or if you think of something later today or over the weekend, make sure that you reach out to someone, either a Center Technical Assistance Provider or a CTAP in your area, or utilize our info@appalachiarfbc.org email. That email is being checked regularly, and that's a great place to send your questions. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Liberty for our Q&A.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Thank you all for joining, everyone who's here with us, and for all of your questions. We've got over 30 questions in our Q&A section so far, and a number of them have been answered already, so please check that tab as well. I think how we're going to do this, because we are getting so many questions, is to go through the ones that are getting the most upvotes, the most thumbs ups first, because those seem to be on a lot of people's minds, and we'll just go from there and see what we can get to. Like Kirsten said, we will follow up with a frequently asked questions list that will be posted to our website very soon. Also, if you have a specific question about a project that you're interested in applying for, definitely reach out to us directly or leave us your email so that we can follow up with you, please. Otherwise, we may not be able to get to the very specific questions today, but we will do our best. So the first question, I think I'm going to pitch this one to Paul, our director. Paul Friedman. So are walk-in coolers and freezers eligible for this grant?
Yes, they are eligible to be covered. They are fundable. I do want to put the one caveat out there is that if the cooler or freezer needs construction, if you need to add square footage to your building, that is not fundable. So we do cover coolers and freezers, walk-ins included. But if there's construction necessary to bring extra square footage to accommodate that cooler, the construction portion is not.
Okay, thank you, Paul. That is great. Okay, so the next question I'm going to go to here is about reviewers. I'm going to kick this one over to either Cassandra or Fran. How about Cassandra? So are the reviewers for the grants external, or are the winning grants selected by the RFBC team? And then a follow-up there is, what is the scoring system?
Yeah, so we have a combination of internal and external reviewers that will be reviewing these applications. We are still building out that team. But once we have more clarity on that, we are happy to share that, but it will be a mix of internal and external reviewers. The scoring system is a points-based system. And thank you, Lori, who just posted the scoring rubric that we have made available. The scoring rubric is going to tell you how to get the maximum amount of points, specifically in the long format questions of the application. So it's not going to show you the total number of points for the entire application, but it's going to show you how to score the highest in those long format questions, what exactly we're looking to see in those answers to get the maximum amount of points.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Cassandra. Okay, the next one. What does a letter of support include? Is this to determine what organization will be providing the technical support that the applicant needs? Fran, do you want to try to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So we have 18 partners as part of our cooperative agreement with the USDA, funded through the ARFBC. And so what those folks do is provide technical assistance to small to mid-sized food and farm businesses. The letter of support is required for the P&D track. It's recommended for the I&E track. It's a way for us to improve the quality of the application and help you beyond just the BBS subawards.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, let's see. This might actually go back to Kirsten, or this could be a Paul question. Did you say, Kirsten, that the grant award is considered taxable income? So Kirsten or Paul might want to answer that.
Yes. Go ahead, Paul.
The answer is yes, it is considered a taxable income. So we do encourage you to contact your tax advisor. They could advise you on deductibility of that. But all we can say at this point, would be considered taxable income for any proceeds from the grant would be reported on 1099.
Thank you, Paul. Hopefully that answered that question. Feel free to follow up if you have more questions about that, any specifics related to the taxation on these grants. Next question, which was answered by our colleague Lori, but I'll go ahead and read it out loud. Is it possible to apply for planning and development track, complete that project, and then apply for an implementation award later, assuming all would be complete before the end of 2027? Cassandra or Fran, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I can take it. Yes, you can do that, of course, as long as the cumulative funds don't exceed $100,000. I will say as well, just to note that the project timeline has to be completed in 2 years or 2027, whatever one is first. So if you're applying for this first round, that project timeline is going to be 2 years to get that done. So just an additional little note there.
Great, thank you. And just a quick reminder, if you've put a question in the chat box, if you wouldn't mind moving it over to the Q&A box, that will help us keep track of all these good questions coming in. If you have that capacity, thank you. Okay, so has the EIG, this is from Della, has the EIG Distressed Communities Index been updated post Hurricane Helene, and now I suppose Hurricane Milton, but that might be a little far south for our territory. Do we know if the Distressed Communities Index has been updated yet? Anyone want to take that from the team?
I can take that, and at this point, it is not updated that quickly, so it would not reflect either impacts from either hurricane at this point. It is updated on a yearly basis, so it will eventually be calculated into that, but not at this moment.
Yeah. Okay, here's a good one. If you're applying as a nonprofit, does that mean that any award you might apply for is not taxable? Paul, do you have any feedback on that one? For those tax exempt folks who might apply?
Once again, it will get reported by the center on your 1099 as taxable income. Your tax status would have to be consulted with your tax advisor to see if, as a nonprofit, if that would be taxable or not. We are required to report it as income. Then you would have to balance that on your taxes. So we would advise you to contact your tax advisor to see about the process of how that interacts with your nonprofit status.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's a question from Derek. I'm a new farmer with no income yet. What kind of financial records would I need to submit with my application? So it's a great question for folks that are maybe in more startup phase. Paul, do you want to try to take that one again?
If I understand the question correctly, it is, do we cover startup phases? And the answer is yes, but I believe there may be more nuance that I missed.
I can add to that as well, Paul. So we are not requiring you to submit financial records with your application. We are just asking that you are able to provide them if we need them from you. So that's just something that we need you to be ready for. And if you are a new business with no financial records to show, we're basically asking that you can show records for as long as you have been in business, or 3 months. So if you are brand new, then, you know, the financial records for the past month that you have. Fran, is there anything to add to that, or does that cover it?
Yeah, I think that covers it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you all. Okay, so is technical assistance from CTAP providers through the center free? And I will kick that maybe to Fran or Cassandra.
Yeah, thanks, Liberty. It is funded through our cooperative agreement. So the 18 CTAP providers that are listed at ARFBC or AppalachiaRFBC.org are the 18 funded TA, technical assistance providers. There's certain categories and specializations per TA provider or CTAP. So find the right fit for you, but they are already funded through the USDA.
Okay, here's a good one. How long between the submission deadline and award decisions can folks expect? Paul, would you mind taking that one?
Right now, the timing that we anticipate is about approximately 4 months. So that this cycle, for example, closes in November 1, and we are hoping to have notices out by the middle of January, hopefully by middle of January or February 1 at the latest. So we're looking approximately 3 to 4 months beyond the closing date.
And just to follow up there, for folks to know about how long can they expect until the next cycle opens?
The next cycle is it's a 6 months total cycle. So the next one will open in March. And every 6 months from there on, there will be an open cycle until we complete all 5 cycles.
This question is from Patrick. Will there be any critique of applications that are not selected? So will we be giving feedback for folks and supporting them to perhaps apply for a next round? I'll kick that one to Cassandra.
Yes, great question. We will be providing feedback to your application. So all reviewer notes will be sent back to you. And we encourage you to work with a CTAP to reapply and to, tweak your application for the next session. So we're also happy to kind of go through and help you individually with your application in that process as well.
Thanks. Yes. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. We've got an equipment-based question here. If the grant is intended to be used for equipment, is it required or suggested to have an itemized list linking to specific websites, suppliers of equipment in the application? Paul, could you take that one, please?
Gladly. And the idea is that, yes, we would want and inspect a detailed budget, going over the exact equipment that you wanted and the exact bid price that you received for that equipment. That would be the minimum. And of course, if there's additional information that you can supply, that would also be welcome as well.
Thank you. Okay, we have another equipment question here. So are used post-harvest processing equipment eligible for funding? And is there a timeline for notifying awarded projects? Okay, I think we covered the timeline question, but how about can you purchase used post-harvest processing equipment? Paul, can I kick that one back to you, please?
Yep. There's two, yes, you can purchase used post-harvest equipment. Do keep in mind two things. One, the equipment has to be usable in its current state. So we can't pay for repairs through this grant necessarily. And the other thing to keep in mind is the time frame. It may be a little difficult to time a used purchase given the reimbursement ability of the grant. So you cannot purchase the equipment before the grant is issued. So the grant cannot be used retroactively. So while it can cover used equipment, the practical answer is that may be a little difficult dealing with the used equipment market, but that alone isn't the prohibition.
Here we have starting to get into a little bit more specific questions here, which is fine. We have plenty of time. So let's see. Would a nursery producing stock for food producers be eligible? So it sounds like garden plants, things like that. Paul, do you have any feedback on nursery or?
Yes, unfortunately, the grant does not cover primary production. So we would not be able to cover plant seeds, as well as the primary production related equipment, tractors, diesel, fencing. So those items are outside the scope. We can offer you advice through the technical assistance program as to what programs may be out there for fencing, and there may be assistance with other USDA funded programs. So we are all able to offer advice. The CTAP provided technical assistance is broader than what can be funded with the grant.
Let's see. Here's another CTAP and TA related question. I think I'll kick this one over to Cassandra. Does the letter of support from the CTAP confirm that the applicant is receiving TA or has completed TA? So is that part of the letter of support, confirmation of that TA?
Yes. So it confirms that you have been working with a CTAP in some way and that, you've interacted with them, whether that's currently receiving or past, in the past you've received TA from them and that they're supporting you in this application.
Thank you. The questions are jumping around here. I'm going to go back up to the top. So would it be considered serving distressed if part of the grant funding would support expansion to that area? So I think, okay, so if you're serving a distressed area, I think is what they're asking, is that probably going to make your application eligible or competitive? If I didn't quite get that correct, Ron, please let us know. So serving distressed areas, is that eligible for applying? How about Francis?
Yeah, if I understand the question correct, if you're already serving a distressed community, yes, it's very eligible, and we encourage you to apply. The EIG.org Distress Index, Communities Index would be a great way to find out if the community you're currently serving falls within that category.
And how about if you don't currently serve a distressed community, but you plan to and hope to expand to that with a grant? Is that an eligible type of project?
Yes, but I don't know if you would get the points weighted for your application if you're not currently serving that community.
Thank you. Let's see. Oh, I think we answered Trevor's questions. I'm gonna keep going down here. Let's see. Sorry, they're jumping around. Do we have to provide the funding up front and then get reimbursed? Paul, I'll kick that one to you.
Yes, this is a reimbursable grant, so once giving a notice of award, you would have to, as the applicant, fund the purchase or fund the activity, and then submit documentation the activity has occurred, and doing such, then we would reimburse you. So it's a reimbursable grant. That is the reimbursement comes after the expenditure. We are looking at alternatives to help some bridge financing, but this is at the core of it, this is a reimbursable grant program that is considered taxable income.
Thank you. Carol Webb, if you apply for the planning grant November 1st and are awarded, when would your project begin? Following this, as far as the timeline, when can you then reapply for implementation? So this is a good question. When does the project begin if you, I suppose, are awarded for the first cycle? And then following this, can you apply for implementation while you have a planning grant in, I guess, in motion? This might be coming up for folks as well. Like, do you need to wait until one project is complete before you apply for the next? Paul, can I kick that one to you?
Certainly. I'm going to take those in two separate phases. You do not need to close out one subaward or grant before applying for the second, but do keep in mind, this is where it gets critical. The expenses cannot occur before you get a notice of award. So this may cover a couple of these questions. You may hear this a couple of times as I read through the list of questions. What we mean by retroactively is you cannot pay for something that's occurred prior to getting a notice of award. So if you time it correctly, I think you can do what you want, what you asked about. There's two different phases. We encourage that as you develop and build your business, but be very careful with your purchasing as they cannot occur until you've gotten that notice of award. So we do want those reimbursements to occur. We don't want anyone to purchase something they're not eligible to get reimbursed for.
Thanks, Paul. Let's see. I'm just going to keep scrolling down. We have a lot of questions and we're going to get to as many as we can. Thank you all so much. So if we're applying to purchase equipment and the full equipment costs are more than $100,000, can we apply for partial equipment costs? Paul, tacking onto this, I would love to let folks know about the sort of stipulations with purchasing equipment, if there's a cap, or if they can get special permission for those bigger equipment purchases. If you could answer that, that'd be great.
Right, there's no special permission required. Obviously, there's a cap of $100,000 total. So therefore, if you're purchasing a delivery van, let's say hypothetically it's $187,000, and you can demonstrate that you have the financing for the remaining $87,000, you can submit for, and if awarded, use that $100,000 as a partial, as the partial payment for that. Now, do keep in mind that in order to get that $187,000 refrigerated delivery van, you would have to, and get reimbursed. Not only would you have to come up with the financing for the $100,000, as this is a reimbursement program, you would also have to cover the remaining balance, purchase the vehicle, and then provide documentation as such to get the reimbursement of the $100,000 you're eligible for. So that's the only caveat is on the financing end, outside the scope of the grant, but you can use this for a partial payment on a product, but you can only get reimbursed once that's been purchased.
Thank you, Paul. So we have a couple of questions here. One is about a marketing or ordering platform such as Gray's Cart. Would that be covered? So I believe we talked about software is covered, but is that software does it need to be tied to post-harvest activities? Paul, can I kick that one back to you?
Yes, software is an eligible cost, but once again, keep in mind the timing. We can only cover costs that are incurred once a notice of award goes out. And yes, it would have to be tied to a covered activity, in which this case, that we cannot cover anything pre-harvest. This would be all post-harvest activity.
Another question here is about livestock processing. Could these costs be considered, is this considered a post or a primary production activity for livestock processing?
Going on the assumption that we are not talking about pre-harvest care, I just do want to put that out there. Post-harvest activity, such as processing, would be covered. So it's anything pre-harvest.
I'm going to kick this one over to Cassandra. Do you have an estimate for the amount of time might be required to complete the application?
Yeah, that's a great question. We estimate that it's going to take at least a couple hours to complete the application. There is a PDF of the application on our website, and so I strongly suggest that everybody take a look at that. The biggest kind of portions of the application are going to be the long format questions and the budget and budget narratives. You're going to definitely spend the majority of your time there. So it would be great to start thinking about how you're going to plan to answer those questions, and really with your budget, to start building your budget. If you have equipment needs, to start getting those estimates and really kind of get into the details with that, because it's going to take a little bit of time. But we do think that if you're kind of ready and prepared with it, it will take a couple hours to get this done.
Thank you, Cassandra. I wanted to ask, okay, here's a good one. Can we touch on the eligibility of post-harvest supplies? Paul, can we touch on that and maybe go into a little bit more detail about what's eligible in terms of post-harvest supplies?
When we talk about post-harvest supplies, obviously machinery, software, marketing studies, those are all eligible costs. So personnel, post-harvest, is a covered cost. I'm not quite sure what you mean by supplies. Packaging machines would be covered. We actually can cover packaging supplies for a packaging machine. That would be covered, eligible for coverage. So we can cover certain supplies along those lines, as long as, once again, they are related to the food or the food product. Largely, we are looking at equipment and marketing and that level of post-harvest activity. So that is, we would need more details as to your supply question. And we do, if we don't get to that today, please do use the contact process so we can get into more details as to which supplies you're looking for.
I'm just scrolling through here. We're going to try to answer as many of the general questions as we can. If you have a very specific question to your project, remember to please reach out to us or drop your email with your questions so we can get back to you. Here is a good one. So are awards made prior to the project completion? So I think sort of what is that reimbursement schedule? What does that look like, Paul?
The general process is, once we go through application, you get reviewed, gets approved by the USDA, you'll be issued a notice of award. You then will complete a memorandum of understanding between yourself, your entity, and the center. And at that point, you're eligible to proceed with the activity that the notice of award covers. At that point, you're eligible to proceed with the purchase of equipment, the commencement of a contract for, let's say, a marketing study. And at that point, once the money is it's expended and post a notice of award, and you have the receipt that the activity has been paid for, you can submit that receipt to the center. We are on 30-day reimbursement cycles. So keep in mind, every 30 days, you can submit for a reimbursement once you have your receipt in hand. And keep in mind that it can be partial reimbursement. So if you get a notice of award that covers a piece of equipment and and a marketing study, you can get the equipment, purchase that, submit the documentation, get reimbursed, and then go forward and purchase and plan and issue the contract for the marketing study and submit the full reimbursement once you have the documentation that the marketing study has been paid for. So hopefully that answers the question. The critical thing here is those activities are not commenced, the contracts are not entered into, and the invoices are not signed until after the notice of award. We cannot retroactively cover. If you find a great piece of used machinery, understand that it may be more economical to purchase it today, and then, but if you get purchasing equipment in December and get your notice of award in January, we cannot reimburse for that equipment, even if it was to be covered by the notice of award, because the purchase occurred before the notice of award was issued. So that date is critical to be able to get reimbursed for the purchase.
I'm gonna ask this question. This is a really good one. Are the eligibility requirements and allowable expenses consistent between the 12 regional food business centers? So do we have the same kinds of programs, I think is the question there, Paul. I'll kick that one back to you as well.
Each center was allowed to come up with solutions that best fit the geography and the problems and issues that are prevalent in their area. So there are going to be variations between the centers, both in what they're focusing on and both the solutions that they have. I do see Marissa's hand up. I believe Marissa wants to add a little more detail to that. So I will turn it over to you, Marissa.
Thanks, Paul. Each center has the opportunity, which is why I've been very quiet in this, in that it is center-led, and that is one of the really exciting parts about the regional food business centers. Some states have decided, some centers have decided to be state-specific in how they award funding. Some have been very intentionally regional in their funding as well. And also there are differences in regional food business center funding of Business Builder applications and the amounts that they are offering. But all of the regional food business centers cannot offer more than 100,000 per UEI member. So for example, if you happen to apply to the National Intertribal Regional Food Business Center and were awarded some funds there, and also applied in the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center, it still cannot be over 100,000 per the award. So I did see a quick question in here regarding federal funding and if you've already been funded previously. So if you have previously been funded for a project, I think here it says local food promotion grant, but that funding is expiring and you're looking to expand, federally you would be eligible. We just can't have duplication of federal funding for the same project, but you're certainly welcome to layer funding in that you can apply for different parts of a specific project, and that is eligible. Thank you all.
Thank you, Marissa. That was very helpful. Okay, let's try to get to a few more here. I think some of us might be willing to hang on for another few minutes after this. We'll see, but we're going to try to blow through a few more questions. So this is a good one. I'm going to kick this one over to you, Fran. How do we know which of the 18 partners to best reach out to? Is it based on proximity or geography? How do we know which CTAP to reach out to?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for it. I would, recommend regionality. So based on proximity would be my first go-to, or the first CTAP I would encourage you to reach out to. And secondly, by specialization. So if there's certain categories that you're interested in receiving technical assistance for, I believe we have 7 listed on our website, then I would encourage you to reach out to a specialist technical assistance provider. We are working on developing a map that will fall on the technical assistance landing page on our website, so that you can take more of a regional kind of a map geographic look at who your closest CTAP provider will be.
Great, thank you. Here's a good one. Can processing medicinal herbs like ginseng and golden seal be covered even though they are not explicitly food items? Paul, can I ask that one of you?
Yes, they actually, in this case, they would be covered. When definition of food is pretty broad and it meant for human consumption. And in this case, they are, even though they're medicinal, they're still for human consumption. So that would be allowed, both those alone or in combination.
Is there a list of financial institutions that you're partnering and working with to help businesses with the upfront costs, bridge loans, things of that nature? Paul, can I kick that one back to you, please?
Yep. We haven't made the list public. We have been working with several, including the ag credit and farm credit that covers some of our areas. So we have been working with those, as well as a couple nonprofit CDFIs. As soon as we finalize more information, we'll definitely release that over the website.
Okay. Let's see, here's one that's getting a lot of upvotes. Would an activity providing specialized training for food production, for example, sustainable ag production, be eligible? I'm assuming to write into a project, and I might need to kick that one back to you again, Paul.
No problem. Once again, this would be post-harvest. So sustainable agricultural production being pre-harvest, that would not be eligible. But specialized training, in the case of training individuals to improve food safety or food processing more efficiently, that is theoretically coverable activities. Once again, pre-harvest training, there are other programs out there. We'll gladly help steer you towards those for more sustainable or regenerative agriculture. That unfortunately would not be covered by this program. That means organic certification would not be covered by this program. We can help steer you to other programs that could cover those costs.
Just want to note that we're at 1 o'clock. Nikki, I'm not sure if you want to hang on for a few minutes. I'm just kind of scrolling through the questions. There are a lot of very specific ones to people's projects. I'm sure these are great questions and would help everyone, but we may not be able to get to all of them today. So again, if we didn't get to your question, please email us at info@appalachiarfbc.org. Drop us your email and we will follow up, and we will be providing a list of these questions post webinar once we have a chance to round all of these up. But how are we on time, Nikki?
If everyone's available, how about we do maybe another 5 minutes, get through some of the more general questions, and then we'll make sure that we keep all of these other ones and make them available afterward.
Great, thank you. And just for folks to know, a lot of questions have been answered in the answered section of the Q&A as well. So there's good information in there as well. Let's see.
Hey, Liberty, a more general question just came through in the chat. Because I think the Q&A might be closed. So I just wanted to point that out because it is a more general question.
Great. Do you have that? Can you see it? I don't have my chat open.
I can read it and I can answer it. So
Awesome.
Elena was asking, they say that they're a technical assistance provider with an organization not listed on the website, so not part of the center. Can producers use our center as a technical assistance provider for their application? And I believe I know the answer to this. I believe the answer is no. We are looking for letters of support from ARFBC Center to technical assistance providers. But we'd be happy to work with you and would love to connect with you in general. So please reach out and we can talk further about that.
Let's see. We have a question here about, do we need to be a state or federally inspected facility? I think we might need a little bit more information on what the facility is, but in general, Paul, do we know if an entity or business would need to be state or federally inspected to apply?
This would be two separate issues. So the need to be federally or state inspected, that is a separate question. But the status of whether you need to be federally or state inspected would not impact your ability to apply. So saying that you don't need to be federally inspected for this program doesn't mean you don't need to be federally inspected. They're two separate issues here. So the status and ability to apply is not determinative based on your need to be inspected or not inspected.
you. That's great. Is there a score that indicates whether a community is distressed or not, a particular score? Marissa might be answering that one in text.
I'm going to go ahead and send the resource in the box in case others would like to check as well.
Thank you. Let's see. Again, we have a lot of very specific questions. Some of them were answered. Let's see. Could one of these grants cover a food systems plan, a strategic plan, for example, for regional ag and stakeholders? So strategic planning, along those lines, can they apply?
If I can jump in here, value chain coordination is one of the coverable items. So that strategic planning would be eligible for funding from the post-harvest point onwards.
Can we talk quickly about the 2-year timeline requirements? Does the project need to last for 2 years or less, or would the equipment be used for 2 years or less? Okay, I'm not totally sure. I think we did cover the timeline requirements.
If I can jump in here, 2 years is the spend down period for the subaward. So the equipment can last well over 2 years. That's what the 2 years is meant to cover. That's a spend down. So from the time you get your notice of award, you have 2 years to utilize that funding and to report back. And do keep in mind, I think the last thing I said, we may not have covered it earlier, but there is closeout reporting. So while it's a 2-year spend down period, please allow your plan for your spending to allow for the closeout reporting, so you don't run over the 2-year mark. So it's really not the life cycle of the equipment, it's the life cycle of the ability to spend the funds.
One last question. I will kick this to Paul or Marissa. For the EIG distressed communities, if your sales location is in a mid-tier, if your sales location in a mid-tier is next to an at-risk area and customers come from the at-risk areas, would that be considered serving at-risk communities?
I believe there are 2 different points in the matrix. One is to be located in, and one is to be servicing. So you would be eligible for one of the 2 point-based questions in the matrix. So the fact that you are, though not located, you are servicing would give you partial points in the matrix, the scoring matrix.
Nikki, how are we on time now?
We are at 1:07. There are a few more questions left. We have 8 more questions, but perhaps it feels like a lot of these probably could be answered via text. So maybe we can all hold on for a minute, answer all of these, and then close out the webinar after that. So we have record of all of them.
Yes, I'm noticing a lot of very specific questions to specific projects as well. So if we didn't get to your question, please reach out to us at the info email there on screen, or leave us your email and we can follow up with you as well. Kirsten, did you have any closing remarks or anything you would like to say to wrap us up here?
Yeah, I can wrap us up. Just want to thank everyone for your time and for staying a little bit over to help us get all of these questions answered. Thank you for being such active participants in this webinar. This is really exciting for us to, get going and understand what you need. So keep the questions coming, stay in contact, reach out to a CTAP either in your region or project specific. And we look forward to speaking with you further.